They threw a child out of a pharmacy at 11:47 on a Tuesday night, not for stealing, not for causing trouble, for being $41.88 short on her dying mother's prescription. She sat on the wet curb, counting coins she had already counted 9 times. A car door opened behind her. A man's voice said her full name. She had never seen him before. The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days. Nia Ose was 14 years old, 91 pounds, and wearing a hoodie 2 sizes too big that used to belong to her father. The hoodie was gray. The zipper was broken. The left pocket had a hole she kept forgetting about, and twice tonight coins had slipped through it onto the sidewalk. She'd crawled on her hands and knees both times to find them. 1 quarter, 3 dimes. She'd pressed each coin against her chest like a prayer before dropping it back into the Ziploc bag. The pharmacy was called Med First. It sat on the corner of Halsted and 47th in the Bronzeville neighborhood of Chicago. Fluorescent lights, tile floors, a smell like rubbing alcohol and peppermint gum. Nia had walked 42 minutes through rain to get here, because Med First was the only pharmacy still open past 11 on a weekday. She'd placed the coins on the counter 1 handful at a time. Quarters, dimes, nickels. A few pennies she almost left behind, but grabbed at the last second because $6.12 was already not enough, and $6.07 would be worse. The pharmacist, a man with a name tag that read Gerald Whitmore, didn't count the coins. He barely looked at them. He picked up the prescription slip, read it, glanced at the pile of wet metal on the counter, and then looked at Nia the way people look at stray animals, not with cruelty, with inconvenience. "This medication is $48 even," he said. "You're short." "I know," Nia said, "but my mother, she needs it tonight. She can't breathe right without it. Can I bring the rest tomorrow morning? I promise we don't do credit." Gerald slid the coins back across the counter with the edge of his hand. Some of them fell off the side and hit the floor. He didn't flinch. Next, there was no one behind her. The store was empty. It had been empty since she walked in. Nia didn't move. She stood at the counter with both hands flat on the surface, her fingers trembling, her jaw locked tight enough to crack a tooth. She was not going to cry. She had promised herself that 4 months ago, on the night her mother collapsed on the kitchen floor, and Nia had to call 911 from a phone with 3% battery while holding a wet towel to her mother's forehead. She had kept that promise through everything since. But something about tonight was different. Her mother, Ya Ose, was 41 years old and had been diagnosed with advanced pulmonary fibrosis 7 months earlier at Cook County Hospital. The disease had moved through her lungs like fire through dry grass. By month 3, Ya couldn't climb the 14 steps to their second-floor apartment without stopping twice, gripping the railing with both hands, her mouth open, pulling air that didn't seem to have enough oxygen in it. By month 5, she slept sitting up on the couch because lying flat made her feel like she was drowning on dry land. By month 7, tonight, her oxygen levels had dropped to 84%, and the portable concentrator they'd borrowed from Greater Hope Baptist Church was making a grinding, rattling sound that meant it was dying too. The prescription was for perfenadone. It wouldn't cure Ya. Nothing would cure Ya. But it slowed the scarring in her lungs just enough to let her breathe without that terrible wet sound. And breathing, just breathing, was all Nia was asking for. "Please," Nia said, One word, no performance, no tears. Just the word and everything behind it. Gerald Whitmore pressed a button under the counter. The security guard, a heavy man named Dale Hutchins, who had been leaning against the greeting card display picking at his fingernails, pushed himself upright and walked over. "Come on, sweetheart," Dale said. His voice was soft, almost kind, but his hand closed around her shoulder like a clamp, and he walked her toward the automatic doors. They slid open. The rain poured in sideways. He guided her through the threshold and released her on the other side. The doors closed behind her with a hiss. Nia stood on the sidewalk for 11 seconds. She counted them, the way she counted everything now, before her knees gave out. She sat on the wet curb, pulled the Ziploc bag of coins from her hoodie pocket, and started counting again. $6.12. Same as before, same as always, same as it would be tomorrow. She pressed her palms against her eyes. She was not going to cry. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that the black Lincoln Continental parked across the street had been there for 47 minutes, and the man inside it had watched every second through the pharmacy's glass front. He had watched her place the coins. He had watched Gerald slide them back. He had watched Dale walk her to the door. He had watched her count the money again on the curb. His name was Solomon Ajay. He was 58 years old. He wore a charcoal Brioni suit that cost more than the pharmacy's monthly rent. He had not set foot in Bronzeville in 31 years. He had built Ajay Capital Partners from a $15,000 inheritance into a $2.3 billion private equity firm with offices in Chicago, New York, and Accra. He sat on the boards of 4 hospitals. Forbes had profiled him twice. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, Solomon Ajay was looking for someone he should have looked for a long time ago, and he had just found her. He opened the car door. The rain hit his suit immediately, darkening the fabric from charcoal to black. He didn't reach for an umbrella. He walked across Halsted Street with long, deliberate strides, stopped 6 feet from the girl sitting on the curb, and said her name. Nia Osei. She looked up, rain in her eyes, coins in her lap, fear carved into every line of her face. "How do you know my name?" Solomon reached into his inside jacket pocket. For a moment, half a second, maybe less, Nia flinched. It was a reflex she'd learned from a world that had not been gentle. But what he pulled out was not a weapon. It was a photograph, creased down the middle, old, laminated in clear plastic to protect it from exactly this kind of rain. He held it out to her. The photograph showed 2 men standing in front of a small grocery store with a green awning. One was Solomon, younger, thinner, maybe 25, wearing a dress shirt with a torn collar and a grin so wide it didn't fit his face. The other was a man Nia recognized instantly. Same jawline, same wide-set eyes, same gap between the front teeth that Nia saw every single time she looked in a mirror. "That's my father," she whispered. "That's my brother," Solomon said. Nia did not believe him. Why would she? Her father, Kwame Osei, had died when she was 3 years old. Her mother never spoke about his family, not once. No uncles, no aunts, no cousins, no grandparents, no old friends showing up at Christmas with stories. Nia had grown up believing she and her mother were the entire bloodline. 2 people against the whole city. That was it. Solomon didn't argue. He didn't insist. He didn't try to prove anything with words. He simply looked at the pharmacy, looked back at Nia, and asked one question. "Your mother's medication, what's the prescription?" "Perfenidone, $48. They wouldn't give it to me." Solomon turned without another word, walked back into Med First, and came out 4 minutes later, carrying a white paper bag with a receipt stapled to the top. He handed it to Nia. No lecture, no ceremony, no strings announced. "Take me to your mother," he said. She didn't want to. Everything Yah had ever taught her screamed, "Don't trust strangers, don't get in cars, don't believe men who appear out of the dark with photographs and expensive suits and convenient stories." But the medication was in the bag, and her mother's oxygen was at 84% and falling. And sometimes survival makes the decision for you. They drove 7 minutes to the apartment building on South Prairie Avenue. A brown brick 3-story with a cracked front step and a buzzer system that hadn't worked since August. Second floor. The stairwell smelled like mildew and fried onions and something damp that never fully dried. The hallway light had been burned out for 3 weeks. Nia had reported it twice. Nobody came. Solomon said nothing as they climbed. He followed Nia and waited while she unlocked the apartment door with a key on a frayed shoelace around her neck. The apartment opened into a room that was trying very hard to be a home. Ya Ose was sitting upright on the couch, exactly where Nia had left her 90 minutes ago. Eyes closed, oxygen tube in her nose, the concentrator beside her grinding and rattling and wheezing like a third patient in the room. The apartment was cold, radiator cold, bone cold, the kind of cold that settles into your teeth. The heat had been shut off 11 days ago because the bill was $387 and Nia had chosen medicine over warmth. It was the kind of math no 14-year-old should know how to do, but Nia did it every week. Ya opened her eyes. She saw Nia first, then she saw the man behind her, and something happened that Nia had never once witnessed in her entire life. Her mother's hands began to shake, not from the cold, not from the fibrosis, from recognition, from a name rising up through years of silence like a bubble that had been trapped at the bottom of a lake. Solo, Ya whispered, the name she hadn't spoken in 14 years. What happened next changed everything, but to understand it, you have to go back. Solomon Ajay and Kwame Ose were not brothers by blood. They were brothers by something harder, something forged in a place where blood didn't matter because nobody's blood was coming to save them. They grew up together in the Osu Children's Home in Accra, Ghana. Solomon arrived at age 6. Kwame was already there, age 7, a boy with a gap-toothed grin who shared his mat on the first night without being asked. They shared that mat for 6 years, shared food when there wasn't enough, which was most days, shared shoes when one pair wore through, shared silence when the nights were long and the adults were unkind. At 17, they pooled everything they had, $347 between them, saved over 2 years from odd jobs, and bought 2 one-way plane tickets to Chicago. They arrived in January of 1989. The wind off Lake Michigan hit them at O'Hare Airport like a punishment for hoping. But they didn't turn back. Kwame took night shifts at a meatpacking plant on Ashland Avenue. Solomon washed dishes at the Palmer House Hotel downtown, then walked 14 blocks to the Harold Washington Library and taught himself accounting from textbooks between shifts. They lived in a studio apartment on 43rd Street. They ate rice and canned sardines 5 nights a week. They saved every dollar that wasn't rent or food. By 1994, Solomon had started a small tax preparation service from the apartment. By 1997, he'd expanded into financial consulting. By 2001, he had his first real office. By 2004, Ajay Capital Partners was managing $200 million. Kwame watched his brother rise, and he was proud, genuinely proud. But Kwame had taken a different path. He'd opened a small grocery store in Bronzeville, Osei Market on 45th Street, married Ya, had Nia, and built a life made of quieter, warmer things. Then the distance came. Not a fight, not a betrayal, not a single harsh word. Just the slow gravitational pull of different tax brackets, different zip codes, different dinner tables. Solomon moved to a penthouse in Lincoln Park. Kwame stayed in Bronzeville. Phone calls went from weekly to monthly to quarterly, to the kind of silence that becomes its own wall. He had calculated wrong. He thought there would be time. Kwame died on March 9th, 2012. A massive heart attack at 43 years old. At the register of his own grocery store, mid-transaction, handing change to a woman buying plantains. He was dead before the ambulance crossed 43rd Street. Solomon found out 6 days later from a mutual friend who assumed he already knew. He went to the funeral. He stood in the back row of Greater Hope Baptist Church. He watched Ya carry 3-year-old Naya on her hip, the child confused by the crying, reaching for her father's photograph in the program. Solomon left before anyone could speak to him, not because he didn't care, because the guilt was so heavy it replaced the air in his lungs. He had not been back to Bronzeville since. Not once, not until tonight. "Why are you here?" Ya asked from the couch. Her voice was a thread pulled almost to breaking. "Because I made a promise to Kwame," Solomon said, "and I'm 14 years late keeping it." He sat down in the chair across from the couch. The chair creaked under him. He looked around the apartment slowly, and what he saw dismantled him piece by piece. He saw the kitchen counter lined with 7 prescription bottles arranged by date, each one labeled in Nia's handwriting with the time and dosage. He saw the notebook next to them, a composition book, black and white marble cover, the kind that costs $1.29 at the dollar store, filled with oxygen readings logged every 6 hours in neat, careful print. 6 a.m., 89%, 12 p.m., 87%, 6 p.m., 85%, 11 p.m., 84%, each number lower than the one before. A slow, quiet countdown, written by a child who understood exactly what those numbers meant. He saw the refrigerator, and on it, taped with a piece of masking tape that was starting to curl, a single sheet of lined paper. Nia's budget, written in pencil because pencil can be erased when the numbers change, and the numbers always change. Solomon walked to the refrigerator. He stood in front of it, and he read every line. Rent, $1,100 per month. Past due 2 months. Total owed, $2,200. Electric, $142. Past due. Gas/heat, $387. Shut off November 3rd. Oxygen concentrator rental, $285 per month. Borrowed from Greater Hope Baptist. Due back January 15th. Perfenadone, $48 per refill. Every 2 weeks. Current balance, $0. Groceries, $22 per week. Rice, beans, eggs, canned soup. Bread went on sale. Bus fare, Nia to school, $2.50 per day. Walking since November 3rd to save. Phone, $15 per month prepaid. Minutes only. No data. Emergency fund, $0. Below the budget, in smaller handwriting, with a different heading underlined twice, was a list. It read, "Things I can sell. Dad's watch. Casio still works. Maybe $40. Mom's gold earrings, wedding gift from Grandma. Maybe $75. My textbooks, if I drop out after semester. Maybe $30. Blood/plasma donation, $50 per visit. Maximum 2 times per month. Solomon Adjei, a man who managed $2.3 billion in assets, who had seen spreadsheets from Fortune 500 companies and government balance sheets and international trade agreements, stood in a cold apartment in Bronzeville, reading a 14-year-old girl's survival budget written in pencil on lined paper. He read it twice. Then he pressed his forehead against the refrigerator door and closed his eyes. His hands hung at his sides. His jaw was clenched so tight a vein surfaced on his temple. He did not speak for a long time. Nia had not sold the watch. She had not sold the earrings. She had donated plasma 6 times in the past 3 months, the maximum allowed by the clinic on State Street, walking there and back each time because the bus was $2.50 she couldn't spare. She had walked to Kenwood Academy every school day since November 3rd, 42 minutes each way, to save $2.50 per day, which over 47 school days came to $117.50, all of which had gone to medications that kept her mother's lungs working for 2 more weeks at a time. She was 14 years old. She weighed 91 pounds. She had not asked a single person for help, not because she was proud, because she had asked. She had asked the landlord for an extension. She had asked the church for a longer loan on the concentrator. She had asked the school counselor for resources. She had asked the pharmacy for credit. Every door had closed, not with cruelty, with policy, with paperwork, with, "I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do." The only door that hadn't closed was her own. Solomon turned around slowly. Nia was standing in the hallway, still holding the white pharmacy bag, watching him with eyes that expected nothing good. Not because she was broken, because expecting nothing was how she survived. "How long has it been like this?" he asked. His voice was different now, quieter, like something inside had cracked. "Since the diagnosis," she said. 7 months. 7 months. He repeated it like the words were made of glass. "And nobody helped?" Nia shrugged. It was the most devastating gesture Solomon Adjei had ever witnessed. A 14-year-old shrug that carried the weight of 7 months of impossible math, and unanswered prayers and plasma needles and cold apartments and oxygen readings that only went in one direction. The shrug said, "This is how it is." Solomon pulled out his phone. He made 3 calls in 9 minutes. Call 1, Dr. Priyan Kemalu, Chief of Pulmonology at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Solomon sat on the board. "Priya, I need a full evaluation for a patient with advanced pulmonary fibrosis. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Her name is Ya Ose. I'll cover everything, everything." Call 2, Marcus Hayward, Property Manager at Adjei Capital's Residential Division. "Marcus, I need a furnished 2-bedroom apartment, ground floor, accessible, near Northwestern, heat, electric, water, everything included, ready by noon tomorrow. I don't care what you have to move." Call 3, Evelyn Boateng, his personal attorney. "Evelyn, I need guardianship paperwork drafted, and an education trust, and a healthcare directive. I'll give you the names in the morning. Start tonight. 3 calls, 9 minutes, each one under 3 minutes, each one rearranging the architecture of 2 lives. Then someone pounded on the apartment door. 3 hard blows, not a neighbor's knock, a warning. Naya froze. At 6:30 in the morning, nobody came to their door unless something was wrong. The pounding came again. She opened the door 2 inches, chain still latched. Mr. Cardenas stood in the hallway wearing a damp gray overcoat, raindrops shining on the shoulders. In one hand, he held a folded notice. In the other, a ring of keys. "Rent is 2 months overdue," he said. "Locks get changed today at noon." Nia stared. "We're leaving for the hospital. Please, 1 more day." Mr. Cardenas did not soften. "I've heard 1 more day for 8 weeks. Behind her, Ya's breathing changed. Sharper, faster. The oxygen machine began its grinding rattle. Nia turned. The monitor clipped to Ya's finger flashed 84, then dropped to 82, then 81 so quickly Nia felt the room tilt. "No, no," she whispered, rushing to the couch and grabbing her mother's hand. "Mom, breathe. Just breathe." But Ya's chest moved in shallow bursts, each inhale sounding unfinished, as if the air itself had become too heavy to pull in. Then Solomon stepped forward, quietly. No raised voice, no anger, just authority. "How much is owed?" he asked. The landlord looked him over. His eyes paused on Solomon's suit, then the watch. The smirk came slower. 2,200. Solomon removed a checkbook, wrote, signed, tore the check free, and placed it in the man's hand. Then he looked up. "And tomorrow morning, send me records for every tenant in this building with heat shut off." The landlord blinked. "What?" Solomon held his gaze. "I'd like to know how many families are paying rent to freeze." The smirk vanished. Mr. Cardenas folded the eviction notice once, then slid it back into his coat pocket and left. For a second, the oxygen reading seemed to steady. Then the alarm screamed again, 80, then 79. Nia looked up, panic breaking through every wall she had built. Solomon moved before she asked. He lifted Ya in both arms and carried her toward the stairwell. Nia ran ahead, opening doors, shouting for space, the oxygen tube trailing behind like a lifeline. By the time they reached the car, snow had begun mixing with rain. Nia climbed into the back seat beside her mother. The engine turned over on the second try. Then Solomon drove, and as the car pulled away from the curb, Nia looked back at the building where she had spent 7 months choosing which emergency mattered most. For the first time, she was leaving one before it killed them. By Thursday morning, Ya Osei was in a private room at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Room 412, 4th floor. Clean white sheets that smelled like lavender. Warm air flowing through vents that actually worked. A window that overlooked a courtyard where a stone fountain ran despite the December cold, water catching light and scattering it against the glass. Dr. Nkemelu assembled a team of 3 pulmonary specialists who reviewed every record, every scan, every oxygen log. From Nia's composition notebook, they adjusted Ya's medication protocol. They replaced the dying concentrator with a hospital-grade system, and they enrolled her in a Phase 3 clinical trial for a new antifibrotic compound called Ninadanib Plus that had shown a 34% improvement in lung function over 12 months in early trials. The trial was free, the treatment was cutting edge, and Ya Osei, who had spent 7 months rationing pills and sleeping upright on a sunken couch in a cold apartment, now had a medical team that checked on her every 4 hours, and a daughter who could finally sleep lying down. Nia moved into the new apartment on South Dearborn Street the following Saturday. Ground floor, 2 bedrooms, furnished with simple, clean furniture that didn't wobble or smell like other people's cigarettes. The kitchen had a stove with all 4 burners working, a refrigerator that didn't rattle, and a pantry that Solomon's assistant, a woman named Grace Amponsa, had stocked the night before. Nia opened the pantry door. She stood there for 2 full minutes, silent, perfectly still. Rice, beans, pasta, canned tomatoes, canned corn, cereal, oatmeal, peanut butter, strawberry jam, bread, orange juice, milk, fresh apples, bananas, granola bars, honey, a bag of ground coffee for her mother, a tin of hot chocolate powder for her. She closed the pantry door, stood there, opened it again, stared, closed it, opened it one more time. Then she sat on the kitchen floor with her back against the cabinet and cried for the first time in 4 months. Hard, loud, the kind of crying that comes from somewhere below the stomach, somewhere the body stores all the emergencies it wasn't allowed to feel at the time. Not because she was sad, because the pantry was full. And for the first time in 7 months, she did not have to choose between eating and breathing. Solomon didn't just provide supplies, he built scaffolding. He confirmed Nia's enrollment at Kenwood Academy and arranged transportation. He hired a tutor, a mathematics graduate student from the University of Chicago named David Mensa, who came 3 evenings a week and within a month had Nia 2 grade levels ahead in algebra. He established a $250,000 education trust in Nia's name, managed by Evelyn Boateng, with structured disbursements covering tuition, books, supplies, and living expenses through graduate school if she chose to go. He did one more thing, something quiet, something he told no one about for 3 weeks. He went back to MedFirst Pharmacy on Halsted and 47th. He walked in at 2:15 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon. Gerald Whitmore was behind the counter, organizing pill bottles. Solomon walked to the counter. He did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He did not mention lawyers or lawsuits or media. He handed Gerald a business card and said 7 words. "A child begged you. You refused." Gerald looked at the card, looked at Solomon, said nothing. Solomon continued, "I'm funding a prescription assistance program, free medication for uninsured patients under 18. It launches in 60 days. It will operate in 14 pharmacies across the south side of Chicago." He paused. "Not this one." He left the business card on the counter and walked out into the afternoon. That evening, Solomon and Nia sat across from each other in the Northwestern Memorial Hospital cafeteria. 3rd floor, half-empty room. Fluorescent lights humming faintly above a smell of reheated soup and institutional coffee. Ya was sleeping upstairs in room 412, her oxygen levels holding steady at 91% for the first time in months. Solomon drank black coffee from a paper cup. Nia drank hot chocolate from a mug she'd found in the cabinet and brought from the apartment because she didn't like the cafeteria cups. Neither of them spoke for a long time. 5 minutes, maybe 6. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of 2 people learning how to share space after a lifetime of absence. Then Nia asked the question she'd been carrying since the curb. "Why didn't you come before?" Solomon set down his coffee. He stared at the table, beige laminate, a scratch shaped like a river, and took a breath. "Because I was ashamed," he said. Your father and I were supposed to build something together. That was the promise. Two boys on a matin craw, talking about what they'd do when they got to America. Instead, I built something alone, and I told myself that was enough. That success was the same thing as keeping the promise. It wasn't. When Kwame died, I knew it. I felt it. But I couldn't face what I'd let go of. So I stayed away, and staying away became a habit, and the habit became a wall, and the wall became 14 years. Nia listened. She didn't nod. She didn't say it was okay because it wasn't, but she understood habits. She had spent 4 months training herself not to cry, and now that the training was broken, she couldn't stop. Tears were rolling down her face right now, quiet and steady, and she let them. My mother says people show up when they're supposed to, Nia said, not when you want them to. Solomon Adjei looked at this girl, 14 years old, 91 pounds, a gray hoodie folded in a bag upstairs because she'd brought it to the hospital like a talisman, who had kept another human being alive for 7 months through plasma donations and pencil budgets and 42-minute walks in the rain. And for the first time in 31 years, he felt something he had spent his entire career trying to replace with spreadsheets and acquisitions and board seats. He felt like he had family. 14 months later, on a Tuesday morning in February, Ya Osei walked out of Northwestern Memorial Hospital on her own 2 feet. The clinical trial had worked. Not a cure. Pulmonary fibrosis doesn't surrender completely, and Ya would carry it in her lungs for the rest of her life. But the scarring had stabilized. Her oxygen levels held steady at 93% without supplemental support. She could climb stairs, she could cook, she could walk to the corner store on Dearborn and back without stopping, without gripping a railing, without the terrible wet sound that had haunted Nia's sleep for months. She would need monitoring, quarterly checkups, annual scans. But her life, her actual life, with mornings and meals and arguments about homework and laughter that didn't end in coffin, had a future. And futures, it turns out, are the most expensive thing a pharmacy can refuse to sell. Nia finished her freshman year at Kenwood Academy with a 3.87 GPA. She joined the debate team and won her first tournament in March, arguing healthcare access with an authority that made her coach, Denise Okafor, sit in silence for 10 minutes afterward. She volunteered at Northwestern on Saturdays, reading to patients in the pulmonary ward, not because anyone asked her to, but because she remembered what it felt like to sit in a room where the air wasn't enough and nobody came. Solomon launched the Kwame Osei Prescription Access Initiative in April, 14 pharmacies on the south side of Chicago. The program was simple and absolute. Any uninsured minor walks in with a valid prescription. They walk out with medication, no forms, no means testing, no copay, no questions. A child should never have to choose between coins and breathing. In its first year, the initiative filled 4,217 prescriptions for 1,389 children across the South Side. Solomon also established the Osei Brothers Foundation, a $10 million endowment funding 3 things: healthcare access for families with chronic illness, education support for children serving as caregivers, and housing stability for patients transitioning out of long-term treatment. The foundation's offices were on the 2nd floor of a renovated building on 43rd Street. the same block where Solomon and Kwame had shared a studio apartment 35 years earlier. Above the front door of the building, there was a plaque, small, bronze, easy to miss if you weren't looking. It read, "For the ones who walk 42 minutes in the rain, you are not alone." Gerald Whitmore was terminated from MedFirst 4 months after Solomon's visit. Not by Solomon, not by legal action. A reporter from the Chicago Tribune, covering the initiative's launch, contacted MedFirst for comment. Gerald's regional supervisor reviewed security footage from November 14th. A 14-year-old placing coins on a counter, Gerald sliding them back, Dale walking her out, rain. The footage was included in the Tribune article. Gerald was terminated within a week. He did not contest it. Dale Hutchins called the Osei Brothers Foundation 6 months later. He didn't leave a voicemail. He showed up in person. He stood in the lobby with his hands in his jacket pockets and asked if they needed volunteers. Solomon looked at him for a long time. Then he said yes. Dale now works the front desk of the foundation 3 mornings a week. He greets every person who comes through the door with the same 6 words. "How can I help you today?" He has never put his hand on a child's shoulder again. There's a photograph on the wall of Nia Osei's bedroom in the apartment on South Dearborn Street. It is not the laminated photograph of 2 young men in front of a grocery store, though that one hangs in the living room now, framed in dark walnut, next to a candle Yah lights on Kwame's birthday every year. This photograph is newer, taken on a Sunday afternoon in September at the Foundation's office on 43rd Street. In it, Solomon Adjei is sitting behind a wide oak desk, reading a grant proposal. Nia is standing behind him, one hand on the back of his chair, pointing at something on the page, mid-sentence, her mouth open, her eyebrows raised, arguing, probably. Yeah is in the far corner of the frame, barely visible, holding a cup of tea with both hands, watching the 2 of them with an expression that doesn't have a word in English. In Twi, the language Ya grew up speaking before Chicago took most of it from her, there is a phrase, "Abusua mu ni hui a, efiri se obiara hunu ne yonko." It means something close to, "There is nothing missing in a family where everyone sees each other." Nia still has the gray hoodie with the broken zipper and the hole in the left pocket. She keeps it folded in the bottom drawer of her dresser, beneath her debate team jacket and a scarf Solomon brought back from a trip to Accra. She doesn't wear it anymore. She doesn't need to, but she will never throw it away. Because some things are not clothing. They are evidence. Evidence of who you were when no one was watching. Evidence that desperation did not make you less. It made you someone worth finding. The world is full of pharmacies that close their doors. Full of counters where coins are pushed back. Full of nights that feel like they will never end. But every now and then, a car door opens, and someone steps into the rain, and they say your name like it matters, because it does. If someone you loved was dying and the world turned you away, what would you have done differently than Nyanya? Or would you have done exactly the same? Leave your answer in the comments below. Every day, we bring you stories that remind you what people are truly capable of. The worst and the best. See you in the next one.